Welcome to this edition of Finance in 5 Minutes, presented by Stratfield Solutions. In this video, we're going to be talking about the capital asset pricing model, also known as CAPM. And I'll be referring to it mostly as CAPM because the name is very long, and so as we go through, you now know that the capital asset pricing model, generally called and abbreviated as CAPM. So what is the CAPM? Well, the CAPM shows the required rate of return of an asset, which is usually an equity asset such as a stock, and it incorporates a risk-free rate. It incorporates an assumed measure of variability, which is known as beta, and it also has a market risk premium. We'll talk about each of them. So the risk-free rate is probably the easiest and obviously one of the more important topics here. That's denoted as RF for risk-free, and it's usually assumed as the U.S. Treasury bond. The one I've seen most common is the 10-year note from the Treasury, although I have seen other applications as well where you may use a different Treasury asset like a 5, 10, 2, or other T-bill type of an asset. But generally it's denoted as something that's considered to be risk-free, and since the U.S. Treasury has always paid its debts, the government hasn't defaulted, and therefore theoretically it is risk-free. You might say, well, it is possible. I've heard that the government could, go bankrupt or something like that. That's true. It isn't an actual risk-free rate, but for the purposes of CAPM and financial analysis, the Treasury securities are considered your risk-free asset. And so RF, generally in a problem, would be given as a Treasury rate, and you would use that across the rest of the application. So what else do you need for the capital asset pricing model? Well, we already talked about the risk-free rate, and you would get that from a Treasury bill or bond. You need a beta, and that's the variation or volatility of that particular asset's return with the corresponding return of the market. We don't have enough time in 5 minutes to go through all of what beta is, so if you need additional context around beta, how to calculate it, and what it stands for, you can visit our full course at stratfieldsolutions.com on finance, ratios, and analysis, and those areas would be talked about within that course. But you do need a beta for the calculation of CAPM. And you need a market risk premium. That is the expected return of the market minus the risk-free rate. So it's the additional amount or the premium that you need to be compensated for in a rate for investing into the market. Now be careful here. Some problems give a market risk premium. Others make you calculate it, and I'll show you what to do there. But depending on the problem you're working on, there is easily, and in the same exam, I've seen it a million times. Sometimes they give you the market risk premium. Other times you have to calculate it, so be careful when reading a question. Some other important facts here. The beta of the market itself is 1. It varies perfectly itself. So if you need to know the beta of the market, now you know it is 1. And the beta of the risk-free asset, those Treasury bonds we've talked about, is 0. It has no variation or risk. It's a risk-free asset, so it has no variation. CAPM is a very rarely negative. That would have an expected negative return. That's not typically the case. When you see the math, you'd understand why. And CAPM is expressed as a percentage, so the outcomes will be percentages. All right, now for the formula. So these all say the same thing, just abbreviated a little differently. In long word form, expected return equals the risk-free rate plus beta times market return minus risk-free rate. We've talked about all of these terms, but simplifying it, risk-free, RF, plus beta times the expected return of the market minus risk-free. Again, these say the same things, just in an abbreviated format, where the most common format is the expected return is equal to the risk-free rate plus beta times the market risk premium. And the market risk premium is exactly that. It is the market return minus the risk-free rate. So you may be given the market risk premium, or you may need to calculate it. Finally, for a practice problem, if the yield on the current 10-year Treasury is 2%, what is the expected return of asset A if the market return is 8%, and the beta of A is 1.3? If you want to pause the video here and try to work it out yourself, feel free, and I'm going to put up the answers now. So the expected return, we take the risk-free rate 2% plus beta 1.3 times, we need to calculate the market risk premium here, 8% minus 2%. Simplifying, 2% plus 1.3 times 6%, 2% plus 7.8% after the multiplication gives you the expected return of 9.8%. Now you'll notice here that the market risk premium had to be calculated. I didn't give it. So to do that, we take the expected return of the market, 8%, minus the risk-free rate of 2%, and that gave you a market risk premium of 6%. So hopefully you're able to come up with that answer, and now you have a good overview of what the capital asset pricing model is and what it's used for. And if you need additional context around calculating financial analysis ratios or financial problems, feel free to visit us at stratfieldsolutions.com for a full listing of courses. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next Finance in 5 Minutes video series.